Hey, welcome everyone to this ArchiCAD webinar in which I'll be sharing a best practices update and 10 cool tutorials. Let me know that you can hear me and that you can see my webcam. I'll be showing my screen shortly, and tell me where you're calling in from. Let me check our comments here. Got a bunch of people on the line already, and I'm sure more will be coming in a little bit. All right, hey, Tom and Cairo, Mariah in Bend, Oregon, Eric in Washington, Carol and Ramona, Jose, Scott in Houston, back for a second time, Saxon, hey, nice to see you, Susan. Oh, it goes on and on. Lennox from Granada. Oh, I owe you an email, Lennox. I will be emailing you shortly. Karen, Tom, okay, all right, great. Thank you for letting me know. I see a whole lot of people in a lot of places, Mexico, Greece, Indianapolis, St. Lucia. Okay, so here we go. So let me just tell you what this is about. I've been working with ArchiCAD for a long time. This is my 30th year, believe it or not. And I'm celebrating and looking back at how ArchiCAD has changed. And not only how it has changed, but the way that we use it, of course. The best practices methods have evolved as the tools have gotten more sophisticated, as we're able to do more things. And certainly the things that I used to teach, I teach differently now in many cases. So in today's session, we're going to be looking at 10 cool little tutorials, 10 features that were introduced in the last year, 5 years, etc., that a lot of users will not know about, will not be taking advantage of, and maybe even challenged when trying to use it. But when you know how to use these best practices methods, you're going to be able to get your work out the door quicker, have more fun doing it. It just makes things better all around. So let me show my screen here. There we go. Okay, so I'll be showing you 10 cool tutorials. Now, what are these tutorials? Well, we're going to be looking at things like parameter transfer, which has been around for a long time, the eyedropper and syringe, but with some variations that were introduced a couple of years ago. Graphical Favorites, also introduced about 2 or 3 years ago. Automatic labeling, which is since version 19 has continued to evolve and allow you to do more things. The new Stair and railing tools in 21 were a dramatic change. BIMX Pro, did you know that you can actually share your file with your clients in a web browser? They don't have to actually download anything. You can now import Revit objects from websites. Building materials, they were introduced into version 17 and they continue to evolve. I'm going to show you some very interesting ways to manipulate them. Profiles, we've had complex profiles since version 10, but we've just added in offset modifiers, which make certain things just a lot easier to do. We can now calculate using formulas. So if you ever wanted to figure out how many studs or how the weight of the steel beams or the cost of certain things, it makes it much easier. And graphic overrides also just allow you much more flexibility in presentation and even for analysis and auditing of whether your model and your project are consistent and complete. So let's get going with parameter transfer here. Let me just get my notes so that they're handy. And if you do have questions during the session, feel free to type them in. I will be referring to your questions periodically, but of course, we'll need to just stay focused on this. I originally planned this to be a 1-hour presentation. Yesterday I ran it and it took a little over 2 hours. I do have a hard stop right at 2 hours because another webinar needs to start. So I'm going to be moving really quickly and sharing a lot of great things for you. Now, before I go on, this is a celebration and to bring attention to the launch of my new Best Practices 2020 course, which will start in January. And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you a very special offer to join that course where you get tremendous discount as well as some extra bonuses. So stay tuned. If you want to go deeper with me, if you want to go deeper in ArchiCAD to really master it and use it more effectively, you'll see that offer should be of great interest. Okay, so parameter transfer, let us get going. So if we take a look in 3D here, where it's just more dramatic when we make certain presentations. Here, the eyedropper has been around since, oh, I don't know when that started. If I eyedrop something, it picks up the settings. Now we're in the window tool, and if I use the syringe and inject it, you can see how the window changes entirely to be just like the other one. Now you can get access to the eyedropper and syringe using these little buttons up here, or you can use the Option or Alt key on the Mac for eyedropper, the Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and the syringe is Option Command, and on Windows it's Alt Control. Now, here's something that's very interesting. If I wanted to change things so that they are more selective, we now have some controls here. So I'm going to eyedrop this window here, and then if I inject it here, of course, what's going to happen is it's going to change the style. But let me show you a couple of variations. One has been around for a long time. So here you can see this featured window with a central piece fixed and sliders double hung on the sides. Now, if I were to switch this window to another one here, you'll see that it changes its size and proportions, and it also lost the sill that was there. So I'm going to deselect it. Now, a feature that hasn't been well known, but has been around for quite a few years, is parameter transfer within a library part. So if I hold down the keyboard shortcut for the syringe, Command Option, and hover over this other part or any other part within that dialog box and click, what you'll see is it changed to that new window type, the single hung here with two units, but it kept the size and it kept some of the style here. So now I can change this, and you can see how it actually stayed exactly in position. Now, what's new here is that if I go to, in the last couple of years, so if I drop this window and I inject it here, instead of just clicking and getting it to be a smaller window with the mullions, I can click on this where it says Transfer All Settings before I actually click on the window. Click on that, and you see that it gives me some choices. Now, if I choose the one that's a preset that was set up ahead of time to exclude the elevation, height, and size, perhaps also the anchor and the ID, then what's going to happen is you notice it switches to the new style, same type of window, but it kept the size. Now here's the way this works. If I go over this and click on this, you can see that there's an option for looking at the element transfer settings, and within that we have presets. You can create new ones similar to many of the other dialog boxes where you say new, you give it a name, and then you make some changes from whatever it was duplicating. You can see that when I click on something like exclude ID and name, this changed compared to this. You can see that the anchor point was turned off, or when I do this one with the ID, you can see that the ID, I'm not sure where that one is, there's size. So if we click on these different things, you can see how the presets are changing on the right side for that. So you can define these and then save them. You can also export them and import them. Now, in today's presentation, I'm not going to go into all of the things you can do with them, but I think you see the power that by having some selected options, you can bring over information without modifying certain things like the size or the window number, the ID, that might be important to retain. Now, you can use this for other things such as cabinets. Now, I don't have time to demonstrate all of the different applications, but I will be doing that in coaching calls and in the upcoming new course. But you could, for example, say that you made a cabinet with a certain type of backsplash, certain type of counter, and now you want to put in another cabinet to modify it or to have that particular style. You can use the parameter transfer within the library part to change that style. Anyway, it has a wide application. I think it's a fantastic thing that a lot of people have not been aware of. All right, moving on to the next cool tutorial. here, Graphical Favorites. Okay, all of these things tend to compound each other because if I go here, I can use the Graphical Favorites with the parameter transfer, and you'll see what I mean by that. So what are Graphical Favorites? Well, if I go to the Window menu, Palettes, and bring up the Favorites palette, you see the little star here? We can bring that up. It's a list of commonly used or frequently used parts. We can also open or close it using a button here. You can see I click on that, it goes away. Click again, it'll come back. This button is part of the button bar or the toolbar in the US version of ArchiCAD that's standard. In the international version, it's a little bit more abbreviated, but you can add your own toolbars to that to have access. Now you can see that there are things here that are in folders, and if I go to the ArchiCAD design here, you can see it's organized in these folders here. And within them, if I go to beams, we'll see beams loose and within additional subfolders. Now what I'm going to do is actually do an update of something that I created years ago as one of my first video tutorials that is actually one of my favorites, pun intended, from all time. When you are working in ArchiCAD, if you have quick access to the parts, it's going to make a huge difference to you. The Favorites palette has been around for years, but the beefed up version with the Graphical Favorites makes it so much easier to do certain things with the organizational structure of the folders. And then with the parameter transfer, it makes it even more flexible. So stay tuned and let me demonstrate that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and select a window and use the button here that says add it as a favorite. And this is in the bathroom, so I'm just going to call it a bathroom window here. We'll take this one and we'll make this small window, and take this one and call it big feature window. Okay, so I'm creating these, and you can see just the little symbol of the icon. There's actually a preview image. If I go and make it bigger, you can see that it's making previews. Now, the clarity of this for certain elements is not as good in terms of the line work here, but in general, you will see previews of the elements. If I go, for example, to the one of the beam or the columns here, you can see what it's showing, the actual preview image of those columns there. Now let's go and get a couple of doors and add them in. So if I go to, if I say this is a front door 1, and we'll just go around to the back here, whoops, get this back there, and take this one. Whoops, I have more than one selected now. Go here and say add this one, and this is going to be back door. Okay, so now we have some windows and some doors that are showing up. Let's just put it back into the list view there. Now, if I switch to a tool like the window tool, you notice how it's only showing the windows. This is a control that you can turn on or off, saying filter to active tool only. So if I turn that off, now I can see all of these. If I turn it back on, then when I have any drawing tool active or modeling tool, it'll only show that. When I go to the arrow tool, it'll show all of them. Now I can put these into a folder by simply creating a folder here by clicking on this button and saying, well, let's call this residential here. So you can have different categories, whether it's the style, or the, all the walls separate from other things. You can go then grab these in the list and just drag them into the folder, just like you would any other folder. Then when I double click on that folder, I have access to it. Now, we can do this within a project, and that's what's really powerful, is that you can just go through a project that you've already completed here. Oh, and by the way, I had just done, just before I started this, I had just done some walls on the side here that really are not part of the project. Let me just get rid of those there. Now, If we wanted to use this in other projects, we simply go to the Import Export button here. And then we can say, instead of exporting all of them, we can say just the selected favorites, which are the ones within this folder, and I can click Export. Then later in any other project or your template, you can go import them and add them into your list. So very, very convenient sort of thing. Now let's take a look at how the parameter transfer works with the favorites. So if I go to, let's say, we'll just zoom in on this window, and I select this window and I double click on big feature window, what's going to happen? It's going to make it big and, you know, really out of place here. But maybe I like the dividers on that, so I'm just undoing it, and instead I can right click on the big feature window, favorite, apply transfer settings, and do the same sort of thing. I can say just exclude these things related to the size and the ID. And now I have something that has the same divider style. Of course, I can modify it and say, well, we only need 2 dividers horizontal, going left to right instead of 3. But basically, it's shifted it in terms of the style to the what I want. So that means that you can actually reduce the number of favorites that you have down to styles rather than which window than sizes. You don't have to have 5 different ones of casement that are different sizes. You can simply just say casements with a certain type of sill and casing, and that's a style that you can use at any time and just simply modify the size or allow your original conceptual windows to have their size and just change the style to the window type. So very powerful combination of the graphical favorites, the ability to work with folders, and the parameter transfer. One more thing. Okay, let's go look with the arrow tool active. Let's look at beams here. Now you notice that there are 5 beams here, and if I go into something like steel beams, here's 1, or sloping wood beams, there's 2. So how can you see all the beams all together? In other words, I want to be able to see them. The folders are great, but I can't see all of them. Well, if I type in something like, I'm just going to type in wood here, in the top search, it'll only show me the elements that match the word wood. Now, there happen to be a bunch with walls. If I go to the beam tool here, then it'll just restrict it to the beams that have the word wood as part of them. So I'm just going to click on it. Sometimes this takes a little while when you have a long favorites list here. Now, it actually is smart enough to say these have wood in them, but I'm not quite sure why these concrete and steel are showing up. It seems to be looking at the materials or certain other attributes in addition to the text name. But here's something, if I were to just put in a space, not the text, you can see that it actually brought in some other ones that didn't match the wood. So if you wanted to get all the windows, and this will take a little bit longer to do, so I'm just going to go to Windows. Now the windows are in folders as well, and when I click on it, it'll only show me windows, and because I have the space up here, you can see this, there's just a little text here. It's now all the windows in all the folders. So if you've ever been frustrated with the graphical favorites that you can only see one folder at a time, just type a space at the top and it will search and show you everything. Or of course, we could do something like casement here. And now with casement, it's going to show the windows that have the word casement in their favorite name, as well as the ones that are made with an object, a library part, that says casement here. So you can see these 2 have the word casement in it, and these are actually casement style windows that are, that are being matched. So there you have tutorial on graphical favorites combined with parameter transfer. So let's go to let me know what you think. How's it going? You learning a few things here? Okay, hey Carlos from Strasbourg. Nice to see you. All right. Mercedes says, can we export the ArchiCAD project to Revit? Yeah, you can export to IFC format, and then Revit can open that and in general, it's getting better and better each year, the data and the intelligence of it. Not perfect, but better. All right, let us see. So I'm going to go back to my tutorial list here and bring that up, and I'll close up favorites right now. Okay, automatic labeling here. So the label tool has been around for a long time. Now, by the way, in the beginning, they didn't have a label tool. You just had text and you could draw lines, a leader line manually. And they added a label tool. I remember when they added the column tool in version 5. I went, why do you need a column tool? You can just draw a little slab and make it a very tall one. Well, columns have interesting attributes. Labels, all of these things, more tools, more sophistication. Labels took a big turn for the more powerful, efficient way to do it in version 19, and then increased in 2021, where you can pull data from the elements. So let's take a look at a foundation plan and see how you would label one of the structural members here. All right, so I'm going to go to the label tool. And when you have the label tool, it can be either freestanding or associated with an element. When you say it's associated here, you can then hover over an element like this, and you can see it highlighted. Then when you're labeling it, it's associated. Now, initially, I'm just going to type in, joist here, okay, in case it wasn't obvious what it is. But now I want to get the dimensions of that. Now, if I select this, we can read off that it is 1.5 inches wide by 9 1/4, so it's a 2 by 10 here. Now, what if I wanted this label to automatically show that? Well, I can go in and, let's see, in the label tool, I can double click on this, and I could type in, 2 by 10 joist or something like that. But let's say that we wanted it to automatically pick that up. I can use the auto text tool here, and I can go, let's see, this would be width. No, it's, general parameters width. You can see there's 1.5 inches. And I'll just then type in a space and then go put in auto text for the height. So you can type in something here and it'll instantly come up with some choices, and then you can pick that. Here's that size. So now this is labeling it automatically. And if I were to go to this here and change it, maybe it's going to be a 4 by 10. So we'll make it 3.5 inches, and you can see how it changes here and it changes there. Let me undo that. Now this is actually can be used as a favorite. So if I get this as a favorite, then I can hover over something else like this one, and you can see what's going on there. Now it's not locked in. So for example, if this is actually more properly termed a header or something like that, then we can change that, but it's still going to keep the accuracy there. Now, if I go to something in a section here, so if we go to this section and we zoom in this area and I hover over this one, you can see what it's doing the same thing for that. Now, we can, if we look at things in a section or in a plan, we open them up, we can see that in addition to the dimensional information that we see here, that there are things called classifications and properties. Now we're going to be looking at properties in a few different cases today. First of all, this is a beam. It's automatically classified because of the tool, but in terms of other things like objects, you can decide, is this object a column? Is it a piece of furniture? Is it landscape? Is it something else? So you can call it whatever is appropriate. Now the classification then allows certain fields to be displayed in terms of properties. For example, is it fire resistant? Well, only certain things can have a fire resistant quality. Or is it an egress? Or different things in terms of access. Those things. Now in Master Template, and this is a sample project that I developed for master template users to help explain how everything works. In master template, we have a group that I've created of properties, and one of the properties here is drawing notes. Now, these are just text fields, although sometimes they can be numbers and sometimes they can even be calculations in the latest version. Now, you see it says 2x floor joist C structural here. That's a drawing note. Now, what if I wanted this to have this one here to have that drawing note instead of this? So what I'll do is I'll go to the label tool, I'll hover over this, and we'll just go here. And instead of having it be this text, let me go and double click on it and get rid of all of that. And I'm going to put in the auto text that is the note. So drawing note here. All right, so you can see there's that text. Now that text, if I eyedrop this here as a favorite, and we go back to the foundation plan here, I believe that this one here also has that same note. You can see there it is. So basically, if you put in a note into a text property field, you can have a label that'll pick that up in any view. And so just think about it. If you have a favorite with the rim joist, with the note that you might want to put in some of your drawings, then when you apply that favorite and you model with it, then all you have to do is use the label tool with the favorite that says show the drawing note. In other cases, you can have it show the dimensions, possibly with the word joist or header or something else. So the auto labeling is so powerful and really generally pretty easy to use. Now there are different types of labels and you can set it up. Do you want a frame around the text or not? And do you want it to be curved or straight and all of that? But this ability to pull data from the element, whether it's the dimensions or notes, text, things like that, is just so powerful that I wanted to make sure that you knew about it in this best practices update here. Okay. So let us go to my list here. All right. Now we're going to go to stair and railing tools. So in the stair and railing tools, they have dramatically changed from previous versions. Now in this particular project here, we have a few different stairs and railings. I'm just going to pull this one with its associated railing. I'm just going to drag a copy of it off to the side, just so that we can isolate it while we're doing some work. And if I look at it in 3D, you can see that, it's a decent looking stair, nothing too exceptional, but something that was harder to do in previous versions. Now this riser here at the end is actually covering the edge of the landing. So it is deliberately part of the stair, but that can be turned on or off depending on how you want the stair to meet the landing there. Now let's take a look at how flexible the new stair and railing tools are. And this also works with favorites, because if I drop this stair here, I could use it as a favorite. So I can go in, for example, and say I want to turn the stair here, and I'll just draw it sort of arbitrarily long. The stair is actually set up to only go up to the next story. Now you could make it flexible and it could go up as far as you click, but in this case, the favorite says find the next story height and stop at that number of risers. Now it says, in order to do this, I need to have I need to pull the landing back. I need to pull the number of steps back to make it fit there. So I say, all right, that's fine. That's a good starting point. Let me eyedrop the railing here, and then hover over the edge of the stair and use the magic wand and click. Now you can see something appeared. That is actually the new railing. And let's go and look at the two stairs and railings together. Now you can see very quickly we've got something that's a design concept. We've got a landing here, we've got the railing. Now there are some issues here, so let's go and fix them. Now, this railing, when it was set up, looked good. And by the way, there's a little curl here because it's actually attaching, going around to attach to a landing, a similar railing on the landing. But we didn't have any transitions, and so the settings weren't optimized for that. So in order to fix that, I'm going to go Edit, and then I will select this piece here. This is a disconnected piece. It's not trying to make a transition, like for example, with a curve here, but in the settings, it's got an extension. Now, why would it have an extension? Well, there are times when certain things need to extend beyond, but in this case, that's not appropriate. So I turn that off. Same thing with this one here. Open this up. It's got extensions as well. So now that's cleaned up. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Go back to the floor plan, and let's go get a different. I'll exit the edit mode, so I'm done with editing the individual parts of the stair. And let's go to the front of the building here. And we have another type of railing here, and I'm going to eyedrop that railing, and then I'm going to inject it on that one. Now let's take a look in 3D. Whoops, I needed to, I guess I had something selected there. Let me go back to 3D here. And now you can see this is not a wired one, but it's got balusters, it's metal. Now it's got some issues again because that one in the front, the posts were changed individually as opposed to globally. So let me go to this and we'll open up the settings and say, you know what, the posts here need to be made in 3D. Instead of with black, we're going to make them with a white gloss. And now, much better. Now we do have a couple of funny transitions here. So this is something that I need to use the edit option, so I can then select individual pieces. And you can see it's got this funny direct connection. We could try a gooseneck here. That might be good, or we might want to say that I'd like just make it disconnected and then go and again just make it have no extensions here. And then we also will want to say just continue straight, don't go to a horizontal, and now we have the connection. So there were a few changes there. I can do the same here. Now, by the way, this material, remember, this is right now set to be metal trim nickel. I could go color white gloss, it would match, but actually really what I want to do is just make it have a simple transition in this case. So now we've got that, and make it go on, keep going on the angle rather than turning the corner there. All right, so now we've done, we've made it very quickly, looking pretty good. Let's look at something more sophisticated. For example, taking this end and having it come down and back, like would be a legal termination of stairs in certain contexts. So I'll select this extension. Instead of having it go straight, I'll take it down and back. We'll take some distance here, say 10 inches, whatever is appropriate. We'll take it a foot down and we'll take it 10 inches going back. And instead of going on an angle, you can see here, this is going down on an angle. I'll make it horizontal so that when you get down to that level, you can feel that it's become level, as a safety way of doing that, and say, okay. And you can see now that's a little bit square. We probably want to put in a little bit of a transition here. So 4 inches radius. And now we've got that. So you can adjust the dimensions as you need to, but you can see how quickly that works. Now, if I eyedrop this here, and then go to this one and inject it, you can see how very, very quickly we're getting the shape there. Now, that's just a quick example of how easy it is when you know how to use the stair and railing tools to just use favorites, to draw a stair, to put in railings, try out different types of railings, and then adjust transitions very easily. Now let's look at one other thing that needs to be adjusted, and that is that the landing here, I think I'd like to make this so that it just turns neatly, that we don't have this extra flat level. Now, the reason it did that, in part, is that stairs have rules. The rules can enforce minimum and maximum for risers and treads and things like that, but they can also say the landing may need to be a minimum size. Now I'm going to say, let's turn that off so that we can adjust the landing. And I'm also going to go in to the turn. This is where it's turning at this corner. Press down here and use the option to adjust that turn, this little pet palette option. So the turning type. We could have winders of two different types, or we can have a landing. When we have a landing, we can have an offset, a minimum offset here. I'm just saying 0. Now when I do OK, we don't see a change immediately, but now it will allow me to pull this back here. And you can see when I pull it back, it automatically lines that up so that this is now not got any extensions. Now look what happens in 3D. The railing just adjusted to fit. So we're able to do design very quickly and have the pieces fit. Now, let me just clean this up. Somebody asked me yesterday saying, oh, that looks terrible. Well, it would work depending upon how it meets the landing. But if you wanted to get rid of it, you can go and select it individually, change this and turn off the riser. And now, although we still see the virtual riser, when I exit the edit mode, you can see that it's not there in 3D. So there are sort of, when you highlight things, you can see the virtual extent of it, that it's going up. It's designed to go up to the story level, but in this case, we've turned off the riser there. Okay, so that is stairs and railings. And remember, you can have favorites for the wood stair, the steel stair, the monolithic stair, the concrete prefab stair, all different railing types. So these graphical favorites work in conjunction with that. Okay, let's see. Any comments? What do you think so far of what we've done? We've been going about 40 minutes, and I've covered 4 of these 10. So let me know. Am I going too fast? Have you learned a few things? I really would appreciate some feedback here. Okay, so Diane, hey Diane, terrific, she says. Okay, Tom says, stairs and railings advanced in which version? 21. So 21, they were introduced, this whole new set system. 22, they were tweaked and improved a little bit, cleaned up some of the rough edges. Okay, Amanda says, I've had trouble getting the railing post to land in the correct places. Yeah, there are some settings you need to understand for saying that the balusters may need to be attached or sensitive to the treads of a stair that it's associated with. So that's a setting. You can also, for the posts, you can adjust, the newel posts and things, you can adjust their spacing forward or back. There are all sorts of settings. Today, I can only show you a quick little overview. Oh, Karen says thumbs up. Saxon says thumbs up. Eric says, do you have a full tutorial for stairs? Yeah, there's a course that I created last year called the Stair, ArchiCAD Stairs and Railings. And that was presented as part of the Masters of ArchiCAD training series available for purchase. It will be included in the new Best Practices 2020 course. And so I'm going to be going back over that. In fact, before I go on, we'll just take a little word from our sponsor here and just bring this up. All right, so here's what we're looking at today, the free webinars that I'm showing you, the 10 cool tutorials, etc. Now, if you go to bobrow.com/2020, and by the way, I chose that because this new course is going to run through 2019 and be finished up in early 2020. And 2020 vision here in the US means that you're able to see very clearly. So on this page here, when you type in 2020 after bobrow.com, it'll redirect to this page. You'll see information about the course, an announcement, a summary. My intention is to make this the classic course, the reference course for the 2020s, and you have a special offer where you can get it for half price and get some very special bonuses. So while I want you to pay attention to my demonstration today, if you want to go to bobrow.com/2020, you will see all the information. I'll bring this up again later on. Okay. Let's look at BIMX Pro in the web browser. Okay, how many of you have used BIMX over the years? So please type it in so I can just see, and how has it worked for you? BIMX is a great way to communicate with your clients as well as consultants. So you have a model in ArchiCAD, your client, you sit with them, you do things, but sometimes you wanted to send them something to look at and review. BIMX allows them to actually move through the model freely and see things. Consultants, when you're sending over DWGs or IFCs, etc., you can send them a BIMX as well for them to review the model and understand it in a different way than the drawings. The limitation up to this point is that you had to send them a file. They had to have the application, which was free, on their iPad or Android device or the desktop version, and then they could open it up. Now you can actually do it in a web browser. So you can just say, here's a link, and they can open it up. This is new as of something like May or June of this year. Let's see how it works. So I'm in the 3D model here. And when we're saving out, let's just say, let me just get rid of these guys because we aren't going to use them anymore. Here, and say show all in 3D. And then actually just bring up the original view by double-clicking on the tab. Did you know that you can double-click on the tab to restore the view that was created, the view that I clicked in the navigator here? It restored that. Okay, so when I save this out as BIMX, I can go to the File menu and I can go Publish BIMX Hypermodel. Now, when you do that, you're going to be saving out one of your publisher sets. So the publisher sets are part of your navigator. They allow you to specify what do you want to export. Maybe you don't want to export all of the drawings. You just want to export a certain, the plans and the sections, or plan sections, elevations, no details at this point. But if you wanted all of them, you can do that. Now, in addition to having the drawings in here, if I go to the organizer, we will probably want to have a 3D view defined. So let me go to the view map here, and we'll take this axo in here and maybe this perspective over. So these are a couple of views that will be available within the BIMX. Now, it may be that you can only do perspective. I can't remember if you can do axo in BIMX. But basically, this is what's going to be exported. Now, this small project as opposed to the large project, these are just different sets. For example, this is within this project, there's the 100 series, the 200 series, the 300 series of drawings. I also, in this template project, we also have a simpler set that just goes 1 through 17 individual ones. So just choose which ones you want, and then we can say publish them. Now, in order to publish it to BIMX, you basically need to set the publishing properties to save the files or upload. Now, if you say upload this, it's going to connect you to Graphisoft's web server. You need to be logged in with your Graphisoft ID account, which everybody, if you don't have one already, you can just go to the Graphisoft site, do a search for Graphisoft ID, and then just sign up. It's free, and you get 5 gigabytes of storage space on the web. So you actually have plenty of space to share models. This model is like 80 or 90 megabytes or something like that. And so, this is a tiny project, but we could have 30 of them or 50 of them up there without any charge. And you can pay them a little bit of money if you wanted to put up huge projects there. Now, it's connected up here, and I can then go and say, I want to save a local copy as well here. I can also go and say, what is the schedule? So a schedule here, if I go to the Graphisoft, let's see, BIMX info, this is the data. So when we're in BIMX, you can highlight something like a window or a piece of steel, and there'll be some data associated with it. Now, what data goes out is based on the schedule, and you can have one or more schedules included. So you just define what data you'd like to have out in the BIMX in terms of a schedule, the fields and columns that are in the schedule, and it'll be there when someone clicks on something, it'll show all that information if they choose, say, show info. All right, so I've got a schedule picked out. I've got this name. If I wanted to save it locally, I'd have to say where it's going to be saved. And then I can click OK here and then publish this. Now what this will do is it will actually go and save this all out. This takes about 3 minutes on this project. So I'm not going to do it right today, but I will show you in the web browser. Actually, let's go say, where does this go? We go under the Help menu to BIMX Model Transfer. So that's where you can go to see models that you've already exported. Here you need to sign in if you haven't already, and I'm going to sign in here. And now that I'm signed into my account, you can see that I have a folder. You can have more than one folder to segment things out for different clients or different projects. And I go click on home. I've just got this one file here. Now I'll click on it. And now this is in a web browser. And we can see a little preview of it. When I click on the play button, it's actually loading the file. And I can say double click on the perspective. And in a few seconds, I will be in the BIMX file that I can literally move through. So it's loading it all up. I can then go, as soon as it comes up here, I can start moving through it. So now I can go, and using different keys on the keyboard, you can move through this. You can also zoom, pan over and around. This little question mark here gives you some navigation basics. Here, you can flip through this to look at these things. Now, if I click on this, I can make it fill the whole window here. So this is a very, very powerful way to share your file with clients or consultants. And if I click on this, I can go to the construction drawings, and let's say that I go to the floor plans, double click on that, and now I'm looking at essentially like a PDF of the floor of the plans, and I can zoom in on something, here, and it's all nice, crisp and clear there. Now I can go back and let's just say that I go to the building sections and we can study that. So this is within a web browser, no download needed. Compared to the full BIMX Pro version, there are some limitations. For example, in the version that you'd have on an iPad or an Android device, you can click on a section and then use a manipulation or tap it and I think hold, and then you can say flip it into 3D and it'll literally animate to flip around. Now you're looking at a 3D model cut at that place. So that's fantastic. We don't have that in the browser version at this point. So there are some limitations there, but overall you can jump around to any of the sheets, and you can also go back to 3D, and you can, I believe, have multiple saved views within that, so you can actually give your client a number of different places already defined, so they don't have to just move around on their own. Now, another cool thing that they've added is the ability to embed this on your website. See this little symbol here, the less than and greater than with a slash. That's sort of a common way to designate code. If I click on it, we can see that this is what they call embed code in an iframe. So on web pages, there are things that you code in using various tools to make a web page have pictures and text. You can also embed in something from another site. This is often done for opt-in forms. So when you say, oh yeah, I'd like to opt in for your newsletter, or I want to get that download, and you filled in a form, it's often embedded from some email system that is being used. And so that little snippet is embedded. Well, here you can embed on a page on your own website, your own model. So it doesn't have to go to the Graphisoft site. You can just have a client area on your website and say, here, this is the link to this file. Now you can also share it directly through the Graphisoft transfer site here. So this link here, if I've made it public, and by the way, I did make this public, you can make it private if you want. And maybe you can do even passwords there, but basically you can share this with your clients or consultants, or you can set up a little portfolio. So imagine having a few of your projects, of your favorite projects, up as BIMX models, and you can then have them on your own website or of course, potentially, just the simplest thing is just to use the Graphisoft link. All right, so I think that's really a powerful thing. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so I see, hey, Chris Sinkinson, it's been a long time since we've had contact. Nice to have you on here. Okay, so some comments about having used BIMX. Karen says, great tool for clients and contractors. Steve says, all our clients use BIMX, they love it, but it usually introduces questions. Okay, are they questions about design? Like, are you sure I'm not sure, is file size a factor when publishing for client receipt? Well, ultimately, yeah, it will be some factor, but more and more, these models can be handled by current computers and by current internet things. Is a walkthrough available on the web browser? I'm not sure whether it allows you to click and say play that. I know that's part of the BIMX presenter feature. I'm not sure if they've got it in the web browser. So probably what's going to happen is they'll add more features to the web browser next year. But the fact that you can now do it is, I would say, quite a game changer there. Okay, let me know also, do you think that you would use this? Is this something that you feel like it would be useful to share with your clients? Now, next one in my tutorials here is Revit import of objects. So if you've ever been to a website looking for, let's say, Steelcase, say 3D objects here. All right, so we go to Steelcase here, 3D Models Archive, okay, for Steelcase. And so you can download various types of things. Well, let's go to the design resources and see maybe they have something in ArchiCAD. 3D Models CAD, DWG, Revit. Nope, nothing for ArchiCAD. But now, if I go to the Revit models, I can go download, like this one, the Revit family. So a family in Revit is like a group of objects. So in this case, the family for this little sofa is a single chair, a love seat, and a longer sofa, I believe. And these can be downloaded. I've already done that, and let's just see how we import it. So here we have the living room. I want to put in that little love seat there. So I go to the File menu, Libraries and Objects, and import RFA as GDL object. Now, where did this command come from? It's not built in to ArchiCAD. Well, if you do a web search for Revit import for ArchiCAD or something similar, you'll see a Geometry Exchange add-on for the RFA files. I click on that. It was created by BIM6X, which is the reseller for ArchiCAD based in the Rocky Mountain area. I think they handle Colorado and Utah and Montana and things like that. So in addition to selling ArchiCAD, they also developed this. It's free. How do you get it? It says it's free here. I think you have to go to their store. Let's see. Visit the solutions page for more details here. This tells you more stuff. And it says you can get it free from our store. Click on the store. Now here it says, which one of these you want for version 22 or 21 for Mac or PC. I can click Add to Cart. So it's like you're buying it, but it's free. And then you can say Proceed to Checkout. Now I had already done this yesterday, so I had that in here. So here's one copy, Proceed to Checkout, and it'll just ask me for contact information and no payment. I just say Continue to Next Step, and then I can download it. When you download it, you just install it. It'll show up in ArchiCAD. And now when I go to the file, external, let's see, Libraries and Objects, import RFA as GDL object, so Revit family as an object. Here's the Steelcase file. Actually, the zip is what I downloaded. It expanded into 3 separate objects. I'm going to get the 2-seater sofa. I'm going to open this up. It'll take a couple of seconds, and then it'll say, which view do you want for this? I haven't actually experimented. The 3D views I just left alone. I say import. By the way, you can change the number of polygons in some cases to make it more or less detailed. I'll leave the default. It'll say after a few seconds that it's been added to the library. And now if I go to the object tool, you can see that it's set up here. and I can click and drop it into the floor plan. Now it does look a little odd with that pink color. That's because the 2D representation is set using Pen 19. Now in the international version of ArchiCAD, Pen 19 is white. In the US version, it's this pink color that we're seeing right here. Now I can switch it to Pen 91, which is white, or I can switch it to background, which means it'll just match whatever the background of my paper is. And now on the floor plan, you can see how that changes. Now let's just take a look at it in 3D, like this. And you can see there is a beautiful sofa, really clean, came in beautifully. Now it actually, you can change the surfaces on it. So this was the 2D, here are the surfaces. So the surfaces have funny arbitrary names, so it's hard to tell which one is which. But if I go down here and say I want to change it, you notice how that changed it to, in this case, a blue color, which was based on the blue pen. But I can go in and say, let me make this a leather here. Okay, so now I can do that, and I can use, even there's one I just tested yesterday that was a fabric, and you'll see that it's actually pretty good. The blue stripe, look at what it did here. It's pretty intelligent the way that these surfaces arrange to each other. You know, I'm not sure I want to do that, but let's just put it back maybe at that leather, let's say light brown here, like that. Okay, so there we have a leather couch. It's a little light there. We'll just put it back in place so you could play around with that. All right, so that is a game changer, because if you've ever wanted a sink, a piece of furniture, or some other thing that just in the world was saved in Revit format, you can now bring that in. It just opens up the whole world in a much bigger way, and it's free from the BIM6X website. Okay, so let's go to the next tutorial. So what do you think about that? Is that something that you would use? Okay, Mariah says, thank you. That is a game changer. All right, so, okay. So Steve says the questions about design from the BIMX sharing come sooner rather than later. He says sooner rather than later is better. In other words, the sooner the clients can see it and go, can we change that, better than doing it later, like, oh, I didn't really think this is how it was going to look like. Okay. All right, Tom, great. Amanda, super excited about this. Marissa, this is really cool. Hot stuff. This is great. Just found this myself. Will definitely use. All right, good. Let's go to building materials. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over to a different file. This one is a brand new file from the US template for ArchiCAD. The reason I'm doing this is because it has some problems. I'm not going to complain. They've been improving the template quite a bit, but here's an example. If I go to the wall tool, just the default settings, and let's do a box of walls here, like this. Those are exterior walls. Now we're going to do some new interior walls here, and I'll switch to, let's say, a 2x4, 3.5 inches here, and I'll just do something like this. Across, and we zoom in. Look at that, pretty wonky looking, right? Okay, this should stop here. It shouldn't penetrate that. Now, why is that? It's because of building materials are being set up incorrectly. Now, if you haven't played around with building materials, one of the really cool things you can do is just select multiple elements, one or more elements, and go to the options menu, building materials. And in the building materials, you'll see a list of all the building materials defined in the current project. I can sort them by name, so it's a little easier to see. Gypsum board, and then lower down we have wood, structural, etc. But you also notice the priorities. And if I sort by priorities by clicking on this header, we can see them with a visual indicator, and each one, like the gypsum board, has a number, and the number is the sorting order. Now the issue, the reason why we have this particular funny thing is the center part of this is made with wood structural, which is fine, but this wall, which was just the default, had exterior cladding and interior cladding, and look at the generic interior, it is lower priority. I'm going to drag this down here so that it's a higher priority. The number changes automatically. You can see this is 647, that's 650, and I say, okay, bang, fixes the problem. Now you may say, well, you know, it's going to happen if you just use default settings and you don't change them. Well, let's just select all the walls except for the interior. So we'll just select only the exterior here, and let's change them to a real wall. For example, this exterior wall with waterproofing here and with insulation. Well, same issue. Well, we could go back into the building materials with one or more of these selected and go and look at what's going on. And what we find is that the insulation part here is a lower priority than the structural. I'm just going to move this one down here. And sometimes you have to move it a couple of times just to make sure that it gets it at the right place. But now it's got a different number here. And maybe we need to put it higher than the generic interior. We just say OK. And now that's cleaning up the way it needs to. So that's a very important thing to realize, is that these building materials help you to make clean plan drawings, and you need to understand the system and that quick way to manipulate it. Now let's take it a little further. What happens when we go into a section? So I'll go in and we'll look at a section here, like this. All right, maybe, yeah, that's fine for this section. Now let's say that we put in a slab underneath it. So I'm going to go back to the plan and zoom out enough to see the little building shape, and we'll go to the slab tool. We'll pick concrete, hardwood, flooring, gravel. So it's basically slab on grade. I'm going to go just as simple. First version of the model is just going from end to end. We go to 3D. We're going to see that what we've got here is just sitting underneath it. It's got certain compositions here. Now, actually, obviously, the wall cladding should go down there. Now, if we look at the section, we're going to see that it's sitting underneath it, and the cladding really should go down. Let me take this wall and stretch it. So I can do this here in the section, or I could type in a new value for where it starts. But let me just take it down to here. Now, you notice how it intelligently intersects so that the subfloor stops where the framing is, but the framing sits on top of the concrete. So that's much improved compared to earlier versions of ArchiCAD, but we still don't have the cladding going down. All right, well, in this case, because concrete is stronger than the stucco or whatever is the siding there, I need to just pull back the slab. So if I go to the plan and I select the slab here and zoom in on it, I can go to the corner and use the option that says resize uniformly or offset it in whatever direction I want, and then go snap it to the framing line. So now it's only going out to the framing line. Now when I go back to the section, we're going to see that the slab stops here and the cladding comes down. Brilliant, we're done. Except there's one other thing, and that is, if it wasn't slab on grade, if it was raised up on stem walls and footings and things like that, then we might really want to have this stretched down further. And I'm just going to do it arbitrarily, pull it down a few inches. Oh my goodness, look at that. It's stupid. It made this go down. It should have stopped here. Well, of course, the insulation is stronger than gravel, but it should stop. Well, how do you deal with that? In this year's version, let me just undo back here. We'll just undo this back to, let's see, we'll go to here. We'll just take this back up to here, and let's look at how we can just extend this part down rather than that. That is a feature that is called offset modifiers. So we're going to turn that wall instead of a composite where it's just a bunch of skins that are uniform, into a profile. And in the profile, now we can offset individual parts. So here's how that works. So we'll go back to the file here. I'm going to go back to the plan and select just one of the walls, any one of the walls. Go to the options, complex profiles, capture profile of selection. So what does that do? It will say, you've got a composite. I'm just going to make a copy of it and put it into a complex profile editing window. It'll be custom. I'm going to save it so that I can do some further development on it, and we'll call this wall with offset here. Now I can go and use this new feature in ArchiCAD 22. It's adding an offset modifier, a profile modifier. Now we can give it any name. There are some ones that are already in use in the template or in your project, and it's good often to use a similar name so that you can refer to it consistently rather than having them with different names. So I'll just say base depth is what I want to call it. Now it's got a little warning sign because it hasn't been defined yet. I've created a name, but I haven't defined it. Now, when you have a modifier like this, you need to define what you're measuring from, and it can be either an edge or a corner. I'll go and highlight this. You can see the little blue dot. Click on it, and now see there's this dimension. Now the dimension I could click arbitrarily, although that wouldn't be very useful, but I'm going to go to the edge here, and you notice how it highlights that blue, with blue, that edge. Click, and then move over, and it says the base depth, as you've defined it, is 0. So basically this is exactly in line with it, but I could make it go down now, once I save this, to a lower depth, or I can even pull it up. But I also want to have these other parts here work, like these are all should move together. So what I do is I hover over this, and there's another little indicator. You can do this a variety of places you can do that. And I click on this edge here, and then it says which way do you want it to go, because you could actually have things move in opposite directions, but I want it to go the same direction. You can see how both of these are pointing down. I'm going to do one more, click on this, and again just click when it's got the right direction. Now all three of these are going to move in sync, and I save this. Now the original one is like this. Let's go to the section and select this wall and apply this texture. I think we can click apply here, or we can manually change one or all of those exterior walls to a profile and choose that new one that I just created. Now it looks exactly the same, except you may have noticed just a slight little highlight there. Zoom in on it, press down, and you'll see that there's a new option in the pet palette for offsetting this. Click on it, and now notice at base depth, I could type in that I want it to be 6 inches, or I can just literally drag it down. Now, what happens when I do it here? Lower. No issue anymore. We don't have that problem. So the offset modifier allows you to have, parts of it, and you can have the inside drywall possibly go up above a baseboard. You can have things related to the top. It's very, very powerful, very flexible. You can also have steel shapes. You can do things where it's just going to modify the core, the flange, the web. All of these things can be adjusted independently. You could have cabinet profiles with adjust the kick. All of these things are possible in there. Some of the limitations are that if you have a more complex shape, like things on curved shapes or diagonals, there's some limitations. They can't move up and down in the same way. So there's some things that you won't be able to do, but maybe they'll resolve that in future versions. But I think this is just a total game changer to be able to use these complex profiles much more flexibly. Let me know what you think. Okay, so Scott asked about the BIMX thing. The BIMX Cloud doesn't have anything to do with, or the BIM Cloud has nothing to do with the BIMX that I showed you. BIM Cloud is a collaboration tool for working on a project together with other people in your office or across the world. And they now have set up a server that that can allow easy access to that. Not going to be talking about that today, other than to answer that, clarify that. Okay, so Susan says, thanks for this. Been scratching my head over such a problem, now solved. Okay. Will the intelligent intersection move to other things like foundations automatically carving out of a site mesh? In general, things are pretty smart. What's done automatically versus manually, where I type this in, that is, I'm not quite sure in terms of your context, but here's something that's very cool. Now that I've done this, let's say that I had that, and by the way, we can go in to the wall settings, and we'll see in the profile offset modifiers, I can say what is, let's say I want it to be 1'6". We can type in these values. We can have them as favorites. You can see it just slightly adjusted, and I can eyedrop this, and with favorites or with the syringe, I can just inject it, and you can see what that's doing. So we can make all the walls work like that. Okay, offset modifier is available in 22 only. Chris says, that's awesome. Joe says, have hesitated to switch all my composites to complex profiles, but that capture trick will make it so much easier. Yes, absolutely. Saxon, awesome. Jose, can a baseboard profile and or a crown molding be part of the wall? Yes, you can do that. You can have it built in with whatever shape you need, but if you want an edge, let's say you wanted the baseboard to be taller or shorter, it has to be a straight edge. It can't be a curved edge. You can't ride the whole complex shape up or down. So there are some limitations in terms of what can be adjusted, but you certainly can have moldings and things like that. Eric says, are you thinking that walls will be better with complex profiles than just composites? Yes. I mean, composites are great, but if you think about it, we have simple mono element walls. This is made out of concrete or made out of, some generic material. Then we have composites, which say it's an assembly. And then we have complex profiles, which says this assembly has possibly framing built into it, the cladding extending down, etc. Much more realistic representation of your building model and your design. So use the tools. They will help you get your sections done. They will just communicate much more clearly what's going on and help you to work out some of the complex intersections and corners and things like that. Okay. All right. Amanda, offset modifiers is a good feature. I usually use SEO to clean up sections, select the slab and subtract downward. You can do that, but think about when you have a roof and a wall meeting. If you do an SEO, then you just have a straight place where the roof cuts off the top of the wall. But really, you want the framing to go into the roof and support the framing of the roof and have the drywall meet and things. So using building materials properly allows you to make all of this intersect in a way that pretty quickly and automatically generates accurate sections. So that's, as we go through more sophisticated best practices methods, you can get results that are more accurate right away. And so again, not quite done with today's presentation, but I'm just going to remind you that if you would like to information on the 2020 course, which will be launching in January, have a special offer. Go to bobrow.com/2020, and it'll redirect you to this page here, and you'll see information about the course. I'll spend a little time towards the end of this presentation just going over what my plans are for this course there, but bobrow.com/2020. Now let's go back to our thing here. So we've done profiles, calculations using formulas. How many of you have had the question or the issue that I would love to calculate the amount of concrete, the number of studs, the cost of the steel, those sort of things that, yeah, you can get raw quantities from ArchiCAD, but if you only could multiply by a labor factor or a weight factor or divide by 16 inches to get the number of studs, then it could do more for you. Well, you can now do many of those things directly within ArchiCAD as of version 22. Let's take a look at the most basic application of that. And then I'll show you a little bit more sophisticated application that I did on a consulting basis for one of my clients in the UK named Andy Travers. So let's look at a beam here. I'll put this just on layer here. I'm just going to draw, Eve profile. No, I don't want that. Let's go and just put a simple beam here. 1'3". Wow. All right, let's just say that it's going to be, let's say, 4 inches by 1 foot, something like that. All right, so it's just going to be a simple shape here, and I'll make it 10 feet long. All right. Whoops, just do it here. And okay, I wanted it to be 10 feet. That was important part of it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this in the other file. That'll make it simpler just to do this. So we're going to go in here. I'll go to the beam tool, and we'll just do this 10 feet long. Come on now. All right, I have a 10-foot beam. Yay. Okay, let's go to a schedule. So if we were to do a schedule here, just any old schedule will do. I'll just bring up a door legend. We have no doors in it, so there's nothing showing up. I'll go to Scheme Settings and say I would like to create a new scheme for a schedule report. And we'll just call this beam schedule, okay? And it's going to be listing elements like beams as opposed to components like drywall here. I'll say okay. And it says, what do we want to list? Well, I'll say I really would like to list just beams. Now we can be more specific, beams on a certain layer, etc. Now I say, what fields do I want? Well, let me just type in length, and you can see 3D length. Now 3D length means that if the beam's horizontal, it'll be the dimension on plan. If it's on an angle, it'll be the length of that beam. All right, 3D length. And let's just say, what if we wanted to have the ID of it? So we can have the unique ID. Let's see, there's element ID. That's the one we want here. I'll say OK. And we now have the element ID and 120 inches, 10 feet there. Now we'll talk a little bit about formatting in a little bit, but I want to say what could we want to do with beams? Now, Andy, as I mentioned, had me work on a project for him. He said, I have steel and beams and columns, and I'm using the object tool as well. These are profiles. They have a certain weight. We need to get an estimate of the totals for the weight, because the weight is essentially how they quote the pricing for the steel. So the more steel we're using, the more it's going to be, but we need to get an accurate count, make sure that it's all being calculated properly. Well, I did a little search on the web here for steel beam sizes and weights, and we'll see that here's a designator that for beams, W18 by 50. It's got a certain depth and a certain weight, pounds per foot. And when I was working with Andy, it was kilograms per meter, but it was the same idea. So I'm going to copy this here. And let's say that we wanted to, first of all, designate that this beam is that size. Now it should be 18 inches, so it'd be 1'6" here, and I don't know about this. And it could, obviously it should be a profile, the W shape, etc. But let's just start with calculations and worry about the shape afterward. So if I go into the settings for it, you can see it's classified as a beam. Now, as a beam, we have certain things. Is it fire resistant? Then main construction, we have available things like steel type. So let me go put in here W18 by 50. All right, so now if I go OK, the only thing I did was just add that. If I go into the schedule, I could go and into the scheme and add, type in type, and here is steel type, and say OK. And now we have steel type, W18 by 50. Well, it turns out if we look at this here, we've got 50 pounds per running foot. Now, if we know that it's 10 feet long, then we should be able to say it's 500 pounds. Well, let's have ArchiCAD calculate it for us. In order to do that, we need to go into the property manager. So this was properties were introduced into version 20, I think, maybe 21. Properties are basically text fields. They can be numbers or text, but they're data fields related to elements in your project. And so they're grouped in different, have different groups to make it easier to see, and you can actually close up things and open them using little triangles there. Now, let's say that I wanted to create a new property, and this one we're going to call it weight factor. And I'll put it into the main construction, which is this group here, and say OK. And say that it's not a string, which would be text, it's a number. Okay, so it's going to be 50 pounds per square feet. It's actually a factor, but for now we can just say it's a number that we'd use to multiply. And I'm going to create another one that's going to be total weight. And it's also going to be in that same group. And it's also going to be a number. Now we're going to turn it into an expression in a moment, but I need to save this first. Click OK. Then I can go back into properties and say that this weight, the weight factor I'm going to be putting in for each element, because depending on what type of beam it is, it'll have a different factor. But the total weight is relatively easy to calculate. It's going to be an expression. When I click on expression, it brings up the expression editor, which we can widen out here. And I'll say that it's going to be based on the length. Type in length here, and we have 3D length. Now, you notice this little warning. It says the expression contains an error. I was stuck with this for a while until I got a tip from one of my clients, one of the members of the Best Practices course, Gerald Teacher, and I always want to thank people who helped me out. And he said, the reason it's giving you an error is you need to take the length, which is whatever number of meters or feet, and you need to divide it by 1 foot or 1 meter. So now it's taking the length, which is internally not a number, it's a length. I'm dividing it by feet, and now I said, oh, it's 10. So that 10-foot long thing is now 10. It's a number. Okay, and I can put in parentheses here if I want to just make this a little clearer when I multiply this by the factor. So I say weight factor here. So now we're saying take the length, turning it into a number, and multiply it by this other number, the weight factor, and say OK. So now this is here. Now, by the way, you can have multiple formulas depending on if it's depending on different criteria. How I don't have time to get into it, but you can have actually multiple expressions for calculating things. I'll just say OK. Now, if we look at this beam here, and we open this up, oh, there's one other thing. You notice under general ratings or the main construction, we have that steel type, but we don't have those 2 new fields. I forgot. We go into property manager and say these 2 new fields, the weight factor and the total weight, I would like to have available for all elements, or I can be more specific, like just for beams. You can actually edit this and say it's only for beams or beams and columns, things like that. So I say OK. Now when I go into the settings here, we'll see under construction, now we have the weight factor, which should be 50. Now it's going to calculate this expression. We won't see it here, but if we now go into the schedule, I can add these numbers here. So I go to the scheme settings, and we're going to say add. Now the factor is something we don't have to display, but for validation, I'm going to put it in. What we really need is the total weight here. I say OK. And now we have Let's just zoom this back out, close this up, and make this a little wider. All right, so there, it's 500 because it's this length here. Now we're going to do a few more things. I'm going to change the format so it reads a little bit better. I'm going to do a few more beams so we can see how it totals up. So let's go here. Whoops. So go to the plan, and I'll take this and I'll drag a copy of it down, and then take this to be 15 feet here. And we'll go back to the schedule, and we'll now see that we have 2 of them. I could, of course, change the ID. Let's go to the scheme settings and say that I'd like to take, just click a couple of times till you get the sigma showing up where it's going to total up the weight, and you can see what it's doing there. Now, the length here, probably putting it into inches with 3 decimal places seems a little bit odd. So we're going to go to the options, project preferences, calculation units. So working units are what you see when you are moving your mouse around on screen, and what you typically are going to type in when you make something feet and inches or in meters or in millimeters. Dimensions are what you see on drawings, like on a plan. What are your dimensions in feet and fractional inches or in millimeters, etc., or in elevations or sections. Calculation units are used in schedules and also on those labels that we were showing, the 1.5 inches, you know, the beam size, the joist size, that affects that. So if I go to calculation units and rules, I can say instead of decimal inches, I want it to be decimal feet here, or feet and fractional inches like this, and whatever accuracy we want it rounded to. Say OK. And now it says 10 feet 0 and there. Now this unfortunately affects all places that it's referenced. So every schedule will have a common format, and all notes where you do the, so if we go back to that, what do you call it? This is, no, we're in the generic file, but if we went to the one where I was labeling the joists in the section or in the basement foundation plan, they would change as well. Now let's look at an example of something that is takes us just a little bit further. And this is a model for Andy. So he made the design. He put in the steel into it. This is a layer combination that says, that just shows the steel. And here's a steel schedule based on that model. Now you notice it has the sizes 100 by 100 by 5, 152 by 152 by 23. These are the steel sizes. There's 13 pieces. There's a total mass in terms of kilograms here. And we can verify, if I click on any one of these, I can say, show me that in 3D. And you can see it's showing the individual piece. So this is really being drawn directly from it. Now this is a steel schedule that's sort of combined things. If we go back to this one here, we're going to see that this is a beam. These are objects. So objects, you can put in an object that is in the library, standard one that says steel shape column, steel shape beam. And it does give you certain automatic calculations within the object. It's actually very useful. In order to total up beams and objects together, I had to do some more manipulation to sort of summarize and have formulas that referred to other formulas in the expressions. So I don't have time to teach you all of that, but basically by sort of grouping these things here together, we can end up with a schedule that says there's 423 kilograms of this profile, there's 2421 of this, etc. And so this is all, you know, beautifully consistent with the model. And, you know, he can double check, you know, any quote from a quantity surveyor or a contractor or a supplier to make sure that it's going to fit this. And of course, you'd want to add some extra for the cutoff wasted parts if that was part of it. But ultimately, this is going to give you very useful data. So what do you think of that? Is that something that you might be able to use? So Eric says just cost per square foot for zone size would be brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can just put in the costs. So let's say that you have different types of flooring material or different types of construction. The garage is going to cost different than the main part of the house. And just put that into the zones and say this zone has a certain factor. These zones have a different factor, and then you can calculate. All right. So Carlos says the steel naming convention is for using an ampersand for the height in inches, and the other part is the weight per foot. Yes, I understand that. Just there. Okay. Jalat, hello. I use zones to generate the area of each room. Is it possible to use this method to have ArchiCAD sum the areas of all zones to give me the total square foot of the building? Absolutely. You can do a zone schedule, and the zone schedule can have different data like finish. It can be the room finish information, and you can have areas, and then you can also sum up each floor or each usage area, like all the offices versus the public space. These can be done by categories, etc. You can see that this is being grouped by steel shape. In other cases, you might say by usage, like of a zone or story. Okay. Joe says, thanks for that tip on the length needing to be divided by 1 foot. Had that issue myself. Yep. Joe says, I've been diving into the schedules and calculations like I've seen from Tim Ball and Roderick. Amazing stuff with these new formulas. Absolutely. All right. So we're in the home stretch now. We're going to go now to graphic overrides. Okay, so graphic overrides, if I go through this 3D view here of the whole model, this is done using a setting in the layer tool. It's a layer combination, and I've got it set up that the walls are wireframe. You can see this wall exterior, this symbol, as well as the wall accessories and these other walls are wireframe. They're slightly different appearance than the other ones. And you can click on this to make it solid, click on it to make it wireframe. It'll toggle back and forth. Now this is fine. This is one way to visualize it. There's another way where we go and say see through the walls here. And this visually is pretty nice. This is using what's called a graphic override, which was introduced into, was it version 20 or 21? Now the graphic overrides are basically combinations. So for example, some combinations may have more or less rules, but here's a see-through walls. It only has one rule. The rule we can look at, and there's a whole bunch of rules. So these are the combinations. These are the rules. And this is saying basically anything that meets this criteria, it's a wall. Change the surface to glass. So that's what we ended up with here, like this. Now, if I go through see-through exteriors, well, now the roofs and the ceilings are done here. And so each one of these, also pretty simple. If it's a roof, make it glass. The combination has several things there. Now, let's look at another variation here where we see framing highlighted. Okay, so now we're making this not glass, but empty. But we are seeing the line work, and we're changing this, whatever these were made of originally, they're now being overridden to be a particular surface material. So this is saying everything that's 3D here, just turn it to airspace. So just see right through it. But if we go through, let's see, this is, what did we have here? This was presentation. Oh no, if we go back to here, it does that first, and then the top one takes priority for anything that matches that criteria. It is see structural framing. It says if it's any type of element, but it's on these layers, the framing members, beams, or columns, then make them, just show them right now as if they were made of this wood structural surface. So it's just giving it a wood appearance and give it a nice solid black outline there. So that's what's doing that. Now let's take a look at one that I have set up for an audit. So what is an audit? An audit of your books is checking to make sure that the numbers all add up, that things are in the right categories. You don't have any sort of missing, where did this come from, or whatever. In a model, you want to make sure things are on the right layer, that things are designated in a way that is appropriate. So let's take a look at something that's set up in master template file for an audit. So if I go here to AMT, ArchiCAD Master Template Model Audit, what are we going to see? Now we're seeing a different style because we're seeing through the building, but the stairs are highlighted. Let's look at what that is doing. So it says, if the test is passed, meaning basically there isn't a problem with it, we just make it a nice crisp line with glass. So that's just one style there. But if there's an issue, then we make it red. Now, what's the issue? Well, here, just as an example, I just said, let's just make the stairs red. So just so you understand that if it matches this criteria, then we have this problem. Now, let's just take instead, let's go get rid of this. We'll change this and say it's going to be walls. And we'll add something here. The walls are, let's see, structural. Where is it? It's structure type, structural function. Where is it? Load bearing. Is it structural function here? Let me just see that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it is. So what if we highlighted the walls that are load bearing? We say okay. So now, of course, all these exterior walls are load bearing. We could make them transparent, but make things that are that are not load bearing there. So let's go in and open this up and say the issue is, let's find ones that are non-load bearing here. Well, there's nothing defined as non-load bearing. Well, to some extent, we just want to make sure that when we send over a structural model, that things are properly categorized as either load bearing or non-load bearing, and we don't want any that are undefined that we never even looked at, right? So how do we do that? We can go and say, let's look at the issue and say that we really would like to highlight undefined walls, walls that no one has ever taken the time to say. We say, okay. Well, there's a bunch of walls. These ones here are underneath the little platforms for the steps. And then these are actual interiors. Now let's go to the floor plan and change this from a standard view and use the graphic override that would be the model audit. And we're going to see that it makes everything gray except for the ones that haven't been designated. So now I'll go in and say select these three walls. And I'm deliberately not going to do this one. I'll go into the wall setting and say that it is the structural function is not undefined. It's going to be non-load bearing in this case. Say OK. Now when I deselect, you can see they become gray and only this one is there. So now if I go up to the upper story, we'll see same thing. This one is highlighted there. So this is a great way to audit, and by having a flexible system like the one that I showed you there, you can use it for a variety of different tests as you need to, or make different versions of it. Now let's look at one that Graphisoft provides in the standard US template, and that is structural highlighted. And it's basically saying, all right, if it's load bearing, make it red. If it's non-load bearing, make it purple. And if it's undefined, make it gray. So these are all great ways to study your model using graphic overrides. You can also, of course, use it for different presentation things like just showing cutaways or other things in there. So graphic overrides are a fantastic resource for you. So let's just see. I think this is actually the last tutorial here. Graphic overrides. So what do you think about that? Would you find that useful? Have you been using graphic overrides for analysis of your model? Have you been using graphic overrides for your own study? Have you used them for working with clients. Okay. Okay, Mariah says, I love this see-through, but how do you create that 3D view I've been exemplifying? So the 3D view, there were two different styles that I had. One had a layer combination with certain layers set as wireframe, and then I just saved a view in 3D with that layer combination. And in the other case, I had different types of graphic overrides. Whenever you save a view in 3D, or actually in any context, it saves all of the context. So if I go to the definition of, let's see, this was up here. So see through, see model framing highlighted, and I go to the view settings. When I saved it, it recorded that it was in the 3D window here, and that it had a certain graphic override. So all of these things you can adjust after the fact, but if you just create a view that you like, it'll be available to you in the view map. All right, so Eric says, what would you divide the square feet of the area to get your number like you did with length? What would you divide the square feet? Good question. It might be 1 SF or might be 1 FT2. I don't know. I have to look at that. I understand that you'd need to do that there. All right. Diane says, why is that different than find and select undefined walls in floor plan? You can also do find and select. Great way to just select things. This is a visual display of stuff. So you could print this out. You could, send it over a view of it to your structural engineer, asking for information. I mean, it's just another way to visualize things in 3D in different formats. So they're both valid. Find and select with criteria is also very useful. Okay, Joe says, that's a great trick. Never would have thought to use graphic overrides that way in terms of the audit. Mariah, I need to learn this. Still not sure how to open. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean how to open. So there's a what is it? Quick options bar down at the bottom of ArchiCAD 20 and later. And each one of these has a little pop-up, and it has a little icon. When you click on the icon, it will bring up whatever that is. So this is the graphic override combinations. This would be the model view options here. The next one over would be the pen sets, etc. So each one of these has a pop-up, and an icon allows you to open up that setting to work on it. You can also go up to the document menu and, for example, graphic override combinations. You can do that here, model view options here, etc. All right, fantastic, Eric, always a pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Chris is super helpful. Antonis, thank you so much. Eric says, no use of graphic overrides yet, but can see the uses. I'm thinking starting small and adding will be the way to go. Absolutely. Dave says, I've not been able to override vector fills with sketch lines. What am I missing? Don't know. If you jump on one of my ArchiCAD coaching program calls, I can take a look at your file and see what's missing there. And then I'm going to explain a little bit about the coaching program as well. And Mariah says, perfect, I get it. Ryan says, will this be available on YouTube? Well, I'm going to do this presentation again later this month. I'm not sure whether this presentation or that one will be available, but I will definitely be sharing this. All right, Mariah says, got it now. Okay, so, all right, a lot of thank you. Difference between graphic overrides and layer combinations. Layers determine which things are visible and which are hidden. And sometimes you can lock layers to say, I don't want to change the column grid or the property lines. Graphic overrides are ways of viewing elements, overriding their appearance, making them a different color, different surface, etc. Colin, hey Colin, thanks, always more to learn. Chris, as usual, a mine of information. Tom, infuriating delay for me between your voice and screen display. Hope not just me in the Mideast. I don't know, no one else has mentioned that, Tom, but obviously you're halfway around the world from where I am, and maybe your internet has got some delays compared to people in other places, but sorry that you're having that challenge. All right, we are at 10 minutes to the hour. Time to do the summation. And what is the summation? The summation is that if you want to use the best practices for ArchiCAD, you need to stay up to date. if you want to take full advantage of the power of ArchiCAD, it will help you to have a guide like me. It's my pleasure, it's my mission, it's my purpose that I've taken on in my life for the last 29, now 30th year, to help ArchiCAD users get the most out of the software. And I want to have you really fly. I want you to master ArchiCAD to the extent that makes sense for you. You don't have to be a geek. You just have to be someone who goes, I know how to do that. Oh, this is fun. Oh, I can do this. Oh, I have an idea. Let me put it in, as opposed to, God, how am I going to do that? And oh, this doesn't look the way I need. You don't want those frustrations of you're trying to get the thing out the door and it's just not looking right and it's taking time and you're having to rework it and stuff. So have a map, have a GPS, and you can get there without delay. If you have a problem, you can look at the GPS and says, oh, okay, just go around this way. Okay, cool. All right. So how can I help you with that? So if you go to bobrow.com/2020, you'll see information about the new course. Let me just expand this a little bit here. All right. So executive summary is, if you want the most up-to-date comprehensive educational resource for ArchiCAD available that's ever been put together, this is something you should consider, because in the next year, I'm going to brain dump everything for you. Now, it's going to be done in sessions over the next year. You don't have to attend the sessions. You can just watch the recordings, and you don't have to watch all of them. You can just say, I want to learn roofs because I have problems with the soffits and I have problems, just focus on that. All right. So special offer through the end of this month, half price. This course is going to be $997, so $1,000. The previous one was $697. This is going to be bigger and better. Coaching program. I know a number of you are on the coaching program or have been. You have a question, send it in to me. I'll help you. I'll help you through email or through a live presentation like this, where you can literally send me your project and I'll open it up on screen and I'll fix it, or I'll look at what's going on, or we'll just talk back and forth in the group call and you'll have an answer. Now, that's a coaching program. If you sign up, if you're one of the first 50 to sign up, I'm going to throw in something incredible. All of the Masters of ArchiCAD training series and summits. You'll see a list down below, $3,200 worth of courses if you're one of the first 50 to sign up. We already have several who signed up from yesterday, so don't delay. It won't disappear today, but maybe by the end of the week, I don't know. Certainly I would expect before we end the promotion December 31st, that'll go. So what's going to be featured? It's going to cover virtually everything about ArchiCAD, everything that I can explain. And I don't know everything, but I know a lot. Fully up to date, taught by me. I've been using it a long time. Carefully organized so you can find things. So you'll be able to look up whether it's site modeling, detailed drawings, renderings, etc. Coaching program, sort of integrated into that, covering strategy, like the overall, how do you approach things, the tactics, like step by step, make sure you click this button first, etc. And the workflow optimization, like make sure you get your favorites going because that's going to speed up your work. Different project types. I'll be making an effort to not just do residential, we'll do commercial, we'll do urban planning, we'll do other things. Modeling, documentation, data, so data, calculations. Logistics. I'm going to run this twice a week for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, but I'm going to aim for an hour each time. Now, you don't have to be there, but this will mean that I'm going to have close to 100 hours to run through everything like that. All right. Plus, every week, except for when I take maybe a vacation for a week or two, we'll have coaching sessions. So the coaching sessions, again, if you jump on, you can send in your questions. Those are a little longer, like 2 hours, sometimes maybe longer. I'm going to record and transcribe everything. So they're actually literally, you'll be able to just search through. There'll be a way to search on the website in the member area for different topics, and you'll be able to find it. Or in a demonstration, you can scan through the transcript and say, this looks interesting. That's at the 22-minute mark. Go find that in the video and watch that section. Okay, if you don't already have the original best practices course, I'm going to throw that in. So you don't have to wait till the end of the year to do rendering, because I already have some stuff in the original course or for schedules, etc. So you'll have all of the stuff that people paid $6.97 for as part of this $6.97. That's such a deal, right? Okay, you get permanent access to it. What is this going to give you? It's going to speed up your work. You're going to be able to get higher quality. You're going to have reduced stress because you'll know that you have the support and the guidance and you're approaching things in the right way. You're going to enjoy your life more. I guarantee that. All right, speed up your learning curve, obviously, and you'll be part of a community of active learners. Now, I guarantee that it's going to help you achieve greater ArchiCAD mastery, and I'll give you 12 months to decide. So you don't have to decide in 30 days or anything like that. You can take the whole year, you can go through all of the stuff, and if you decide it just doesn't work for you, if you decide that it really didn't give you the resources you needed, or if you just get tired of listening to me, then you can ask for a refund. All right, so the 50 bonus, all of this, check out this page. All of these courses by Tim Ball, Andreas Lettner, Gary Laws, Roderick, etc. Number that I made here. Fantastic collection here if you're one of the first 50 here. Here's a little summary. Click on this, sounds good, to sign up. You'll see all the things that you're getting. You'll see this amazing, massive discount. I've never done this before. This is what you pay. Okay, and if you wanted to get master template, if you don't have master template, after you buy this, if you wanted to get it, I won't throw it in. Master template normally $397, so $400. You can get it for half price, save $200 if you wanted to get master template afterward. So you just email me, or I may set it up so that there's an automatic way to do that, but you can have the complete kit that way. All right, so I need to finish up in a couple of minutes because we are at the 2-hour mark. Let's just see what we got here. All right, so Susan says also a problem in Malibu. So I guess that might have been the delay. I'm sorry about that. So Haraldar says, where do we sign up? Bobrow.com/2020, Bobrow.com/2020. Carlos, first webinar, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. You are very welcome. Plug for Eric from Joe Archibald. Last year's masterclass was amazing. That was the Masters of ArchiCAD 2017. He says, can only imagine what the 2020 program will provide. Thanks for all the help over more than 6 years. Eric, if I didn't use ArchiCAD for work, perhaps I could afford to spend the time learning it. Until then, I keep looking to experts like you, Tim Ball, Roderick. So you went through that course. You took some time to learn it, and you leveraged it into just getting your projects done. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Scott says, I sure like the new Eric. Okay, Scott. Love your enthusiasm. It's infectious. All right, Saxon's got to go. Tom, thanks. Luis, highly recommended. Thank you, Luis. Luis has been in my coaching program for a while and always sends in really interesting questions. I love helping ArchiCAD users just get the work done faster, easier, better. Please pass this along. Tell your colleagues about my work, about this webinar. Bobrow.com/webinar. We'll have information on this, and Bobrow.com/2020 is where you can find more information and invest in the new program. It's been my pleasure to share it with you. This is Eric Bobrow. Thanks for watching.